And so I am delighted to welcome Karl, and I'll let him introduce our first speaker. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paula. It's great to be here, and I have to thank Doug for specifically scheduling this meeting so that I can meet so many of you in my first two months here without doing so much traveling. So, Doug, thanks for that. I think the first step in enhancing the student's learning experience is changing how we communicate with our prospects and our students. And, as any of you have kids, nieces and nephews know that the way that kids today are communicating and listening, is very different. They're doing it in all sorts of new ways and ways that are hard for us to sometimes even understand or imagine. We talked a lot this morning about social and mobile. These are technologies that are being used not just as new forms of communication, but we see various consumer industries really being disrupted by some of these technologies and creating whole new ways of delivering services in the consumer markets and really raising the expectations of our students and of our prospects for how they expect to use technology going forward in the future. And I think as we go through this, if our goal is to improve our communication with our students and our prospects, we have to understand these capabilities, these technologies, and really improve how we get our message out through these new technologies. And our next guest is going to help us understand more about this. Kevin Skobac is the leads the digital and social strategy at SS&K, which is a leading digital communications firm. He works with many different clients to devise strategies for how they use technologies and emerging media to better communicate with their constituents around the world. After Kevin does his prepared remarks, we'll come back out and take questions from the audience. So get your text or your email ready. But right now, let me just introduce Kevin and bring him to the stage.
Thank you all for having me today. I'm really excited to be here with everyone, and really it couldn't be a more opportune time for me to speak to you all. Actually, yesterday was my 10-year college reunion, so I was up in Boston at Brandeis University, touring my campus and back in the college mindset for the first time in a long time. And it really gave me an opportunity to think about, in the past 10 years, how much digital media, social media has really changed the world, and how kids today entering Brandeis are having a different experience than I did. When I decided to go to Brandeis, I was thinking about the things that I made my choices on, and one of them was Brandeis actually was one of the universities that could offer me broadband internet access. And it's amazing to think, but there were certain colleges that I didn't have the chance to go online easily. And so that was one of the reasons I was attracted to the school. And one of the biggest reasons I wanted broadband internet access was because I wanted to use Napster. Napster was completely new to the world. It was changing music. I wanted free music, and I wanted to be able to download all day long. And if I had gone to other schools, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. And, and amazingly, I actually had to get my email by connecting to America Online. And I had to sign on to AOL, and Facebook obviously wasn't even a thing. Mark Zuckerberg was still a few years younger than me. He was still in high school. He hadn't had that idea yet. And I did go to school with a cell phone, which, actually thinking back was pretty significant for me. It was my first phone. But my phone could actually only make calls in the tri-state area. So if I think about, the things, that's an amazing thing. Like people nowadays, they grow up, they don't even have an idea of, if you're in the US, the idea of long distance. So the world was very different, and the internet and mobile, and more importantly, social, has really changed a lot of things. And so that's what I'm here to talk to you guys about today, communicating with teens in a social world. So As I said, my name is Kevin Skobac. I do digital strategy at a firm called SS&K. And SS&K is a unique agency because we were actually formed by 3 politicians, not advertisers. And that puts us in a unique position to have an opportunity to work with political campaigns and social action efforts and everything from cause-related marketing to big business. So over 10 years, I've had the opportunity to work on a lot of really meaningful campaigns that speak to the youth audience. And I actually got my start working for the government. I actually worked pretty much down the street from here on what's called the Office of National Drug Control Policy. And our job was to find a way to communicate with teens differently to get them to reduce drug use by 25% over 10 years. And that was something that was really important to me. I've helped launch products that speak directly to teens. And even in the last few years, I had the opportunity to work on the election campaign, helping rally the college vote. So, everything I've been doing has really been targeted to this audience. And we've had a few things in common through all these campaigns. One, at SS&K, we focus really on this idea of creativity with purpose. Whether it's cause-related communication or consumer-related communication, whether we're trying to change drug use, change the vote, or sell a product, it's about using creativity to drive action. And 2, and why we're all here today, is because every one of these campaigns was about speaking to the teen audience. Now, the advertising world and the communications world, for a while it was very clear-cut. There was a very clear path. The things we did had a very specific purpose. You used TV for awareness, radio for consideration, print for preference, whatever it was, the formula, it was very clear-cut, it was very understood. No matter who you were speaking to and what you wanted to accomplish, we knew the path of getting there. Today, the world is very different. It's all sorts of directions. People are inundated with information. Depending on the audience, depending on what you're trying to do, it feels like it's a different route you have to take every time. And that makes our job a lot harder. The truth is, the world is incredibly noisy. You can reach people on phones through mobile advertising. You can reach people out in the street with digital billboards. You can even target people through video games. But every audience has a different need at a different time, and we have to figure out how to accomplish what we want to accomplish. So the world hasn't gone nuts, but it has gone social. And social media, as you all know, has changed just about everything from how we communicate to how we make our decisions to how we have our relationship with brands. And how big is that? When we look at how people spend time with media throughout their day, obviously print and radio has gone down a lot. That's not surprising. You wouldn't be here today having this conversation if the old forms of media were still as big as they were. TV is still the king, but as we've seen in the last year, TV has actually gone down. And if you look at internet and mobile, time spent with them combined is 45% of a person's day. That's already more than TV and going in the opposite direction. And if we think about the reach of different media conglomerates, if Facebook were a country and you looked at its population versus the reach of the world, Facebook would actually be the third largest country in the world. It's approaching 1.3 billion people using that service every month. And with its acquisition of mobile messaging platform WhatsApp, it's actually going to be probably the largest country in the world by the end of the year. And if you look at this list, what's amazing is it's not the only property. You see up there LinkedIn, Twitter, there's lots of different names on the board. Every second, 2 new members join LinkedIn. And to put that in context, if you think about the entire enrollment of the Ivy League universities every year, that entire enrollment, that number of people is joining LinkedIn every single day. Twitter, which was the last name on that list of 10 countries, has over 255 million active users every month. And that's not a US thing, that's a global thing. 77% of Twitter's audience is actually outside the US. It's a worldwide phenomenon. And probably the scariest number that you'll see today, 1.8 billion photos are uploaded every single day to Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and the likes. And this is not just people going on family vacations, posting their albums directly to the internet. This is how people communicate. This is how teens communicate. Snapchat is a platform that somewhere around 20 to 30 million people use every day. That service sees 700 million photos every single day. So that means the average person will send 20 to 30 photos to their friends with text on top of it as a way of communicating throughout the day. And to punctuate that, the word selfie is actually now an official word in the US dictionary. So what's really important is to think about the channels we have to reach people. And one of the things we look at is what the role of media conglomerates, media properties, what their opportunity is and how we should use them. And I don't know if anyone got to read, but maybe a week or two ago, the New York Times actually did a self-assessment of where they stand in the world and what their strengths and weaknesses are. And they did an innovation report, and it actually, unfortunate for them, fortunate for us, leaked to the internet. And we had the opportunity to see where they think their strengths and weaknesses are. And one of the things they talked about was the power of their homepage. The New York Times homepage used to be one of the absolute best ways to reach the world and have an impact. And they've seen over the last 2 years a 50% decline in the traffic at thenewyorktimes.com. And over that same time, BuzzFeed, a competing social news property, has actually climbed to over 130 million people each month. But that's not the scariest number. The scary number is that BuzzFeed is a property that's built on social sharing, and it sees over 50 million engagements every month of its content on Facebook alone. So that's not even people going to BuzzFeed. That's just their content out on the web. And so the New York Times, they brought up an interesting point about themselves, and they said, we have a real problem, because if the homepage reflects the power of the editor, the power of us getting to say what's important to the world and what people are going to see and read and consume and think. Well, BuzzFeed represents the opposite. It represents the world deciding what they like, what they're voting, what they're sharing. And so with the downfall of the homepage, it's kind of a changing of the tide of who controls the media. And this isn't just media, this is also education in your backyard. If we look at last year, over 25 million people used a mobile app called Duolingo to learn a second language throughout the year right on their phone. And this is actually an application I hadn't discovered until I was doing research for today. And amazingly, in the last week, now that I know about it, I see it everywhere. I see it in the airport coming here, I saw it in the subway. Over 35 million people use a mobile app called ClassDojo. ClassDojo is a really interesting application that actually connects teachers with parents. So instead of waiting for that semi-annual meeting with the teacher to discuss how your student is doing in class, they can actually now do reporting on their students and have a conversation with their teacher about what their kids need to study harder on. And Khan Academy, which I think we're all familiar with, has seen now over 430 million views of their seminars online. And that's not just a US number. Again, like we were looking at Twitter, Duolingo actually, 25% of its audience is in the US, but actually 29% of it is in Latin America and in countries all over the world. So this is the world youth today are growing up in. This is what their media landscape looks like. Now I want to talk a little bit about their mindset. If this is how they're communicating, if this is how they're interacting, what are they thinking, what are they feeling? There was actually an interesting video series online that shows teens today, 12 to 17-year-olds, sitting in front of computers and different technology settings from 1999. And I was watching one over the weekend that got released, and they had a kid in front of a computer from 1999, and they asked him to turn it on, and he pushed the monitor button, and nothing happened because he didn't know there was a switch in the back for the base of the station. And then he had to get online, and he clicked the button they told him, and he heard that annoying noise that we're all used to. And he had no idea what that was. So they just think a little differently, and their expectations are a little different. They've never grown up in a world where social wasn't a thing. They've never grown up in a world where they don't have cell phones that can do a million times more than we could do 10 years ago. They actually sleep with their cell phones next to their pillow. And they don't make phone calls, they text. They text over 40 times a day. They can text over 40 words per minute. Email is considered old school to them. If they want to talk to each other, they would text, of course, but they would also use Facebook or WhatsApp or whatever the app of the day is. They consume almost 16 hours of media all day long. They consume information through site bites. This is a really interesting thing. We talked about Snapchat, about how people are sending pictures instead of texting, but also, BuzzFeed, it didn't just break down the homepage of New York Times, it actually broke down what it means to convey news in society today. Teens are used to reading articles in lists, in slideshows, even in quiz format. They're not used to sitting there reading long text. And right now we're going through what we consider kind of like a TV renaissance. HBO, Netflix, they're redefining TV with these 12-hour serial dramas, which is all really exciting. But teens today actually, they'll get a show on 15 seconds on a video on Instagram, and they'll watch a 6-second video on Vine and get the message. So on one end, things are getting a lot deeper, and one things are getting a lot shallower. They've become accustomed to constant reward. Some people call it gamification, but really this idea of consistent feedback about where they are in the world and how they're interacting with your brand and how far they're succeeding. We look at health with people walking around with, my phone is my Nike tracker, and it tells me how many steps I've walked today and if I've improved from yesterday. LinkedIn now has the ability to grade each other on skills and actually shows you when you sign onto your profile how you rank against your friends in terms of your reach in your own career field. Authority comes from the bottom, like New York Times is realizing with its homepage, but it's not just media. If you think about Kickstarter, Kickstarter's an opportunity for us to say not only, what content we want produced, but what products we want created. Things that are not already attracted before they come to market actually may never come to market. And this is a scary thing we found. Teens would actually rather lose their sense of smell than technology. In a survey, they actually said they'd give up their nose before their phone. And they don't listen to brands trying to sell cool. They listen to brands that make them feel smart. This is a critical thing. They have a hypersensitive idea of, they can just absolutely tell when you're being inauthentic, when you're not speaking directly to them in a voice that is really yours, if you're trying to be cool in a way you aren't. You need to really be critically authentic. Their idea of brand relationship is collaborative. That means you aren't just giving them something that you want to give them. You have to take the opportunity to listen, whether it's through social media, through focus groups, however you're going to do it. You need to be paying attention to what they're saying, how they're consuming your products, how they're reacting to the messages you're putting out in the marketplace. And they have 145 conversations a week about brands. That's a massive number. It surprises us all. But what's great about it is most of the conversations are actually positive. And the biggest opportunity of all, 6 out of 10 of those conversations, one of the parties in the conversation will change their opinion, which means we have a huge opportunity, if we're part of that conversation, to change someone's decisions. So what can we do? We think about creating conversations that matter and engagement, not media. It's not enough just to put your message out there. You have to be communicating. You have to be having a dialogue. And at SSNK, we have a process for doing this, and we call it choreographing the spontaneity, which is a little bit funny to say that we're choreographing spontaneity. But we look at it as provoke, connect, share, own. Provoke. Put a message out there that really matters. It's not enough just to say something. You need to say something that is worthy of people's time. Again, attention is really slim. Media is really fragmented, and you need to give people a reason to stop and pay attention. You need to find ways to connect with them. If you can't just put out your message and blast it on TV anymore, you have to find ways of getting it out there in a way that will put it directly in the conversation that's happening. You need to give people the ability to share your message, make them connected to you in a way that they're going to want to, and then eventually to own it, to make your product their own, to make your message their own, make them internalize it, and even bring them in as part of the process. And I wanted to give one example of how we've done that. Recently, we were lucky enough to have an opportunity to work for HBO, and HBO has a product called HBO Go, which some of you may be familiar with. It's the ability to watch HBO on your tablet or your phone. And it's actually an interesting product because it fits perfectly for the youth and college demographic. People can watch HBO at college. That's kind of a new thing. The problem is that HBO, typically the account holder is your parent. You're never a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, 19-year-old deciding you're going to spend $100 a month on HBO. So we needed to find a way to have a message that resonated with teens, that got them excited about the product, but also enabled them to communicate with their parents that they wanted it. So we had to speak to 2 different audiences and find a way to do it authentically. And we hit on this idea, and I'm going to give you a little preview of it, called awkward family viewing. It was a universal truth that no matter which side of the table you're on, it can be really awkward to watch HBO with your parents.
Now, what house is she in?
Targaryen.
Oh.
And Diana House.
Oh, no. She's married to that big guy. The big guy with the eyeliner, right?
Drogo.
Drogo.
He's
right.
dead.
Oh.
Hey, that's the guy from the movie we saw.
You're right, it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I love him.
It's a different guy.
Really wonderful. That's his name.
I think it's Paul Rudd.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's not him.
HBO Go, the best of HBO on all your favorite devices. Far, far away from your parents.
So, if you don't know, it wasn't Paul Rudd. And there's 6 more spots other than this, which I encourage you to go on HBO's page and watch. They're really funny. Most of them weren't tame enough for a conference room. But so, we talked about provoke, connect, share, own. it wouldn't have been enough for us to create those spots. If we'd have just created them and put them up on YouTube, there would have been a chance people saw them, but it would have been a slim chance, and it probably wouldn't have made a difference. So we went back to BuzzFeed, the property we've been talking about here, and we said, what if we worked with you to get these spots out in the conversation? We wanted to bring the idea of awkward family moments out to people where they were possibly thinking about it. So BuzzFeed not only took the videos and put them out on the web, but they also created all types of articles like this one we have featured here, which is 12 awkward movie moments to watch with your parents. And then instead of going out and putting them on TV spots or even banner ads across the web, we actually exclusively distributed the videos through social media. And we gave them first to the audiences of these shows. So if this was a True Blood clip, we put it out on Facebook, on the True Blood Facebook page, and gave teens and college students the opportunity to share the assets first before we even put money behind it. And last, we actually briefed college students on the idea of the campaign when we put it out in market. And we even gave them an opportunity to create commercials themselves. And we got tons of stuff back. We had kids film the actual spots that we created along with their parents on the couch. And you can see there's someone here who sent us pictures of themselves watching Girls with their parents and all different types of things. And so then we took these ads and we ran them on our own pages to really embrace our audience. So your prospective students are learning, forming relationships, and making decisions in this world. And these are the types of decisions you have to make and the types of actions you have to take to connect with them. Before I leave you, I wanted to give you 5 different tips on thinking through this and some ideas, some thought starters for doing this on your own. 1, really make sure to speak their language. We had an opportunity to work for an organization called SALT recently, which some of you may be familiar with. SALT is an organization that helps students tackle student debt, which is obviously a huge issue when they go to college. And this is a real problem because kids in college don't really want to think about debt. In fact, they want to think about debt as little as possible until they really have to, and then it becomes a bigger and bigger problem. So we knew we had to find a way to reposition the issue, and we knew we needed to find a way to speak to them in a way that they'd pay attention. So instead of doing it ourselves, we actually reached out to College Humor, and we briefed a few of their comedians on creating videos that tackled the topic of student debt and put it out on the web to have a different conversation with our audience. And the videos aren't here right now. You can watch them on your own, but it was a really cool thing that we put out because the feedback we got was, this is the first time I've watched something from a brand start to finish, and I could really see myself in the video, and these are the conversations I have with my friends every day. Empower them on their own terms. The way I like to think about it is, if there's something that's been done one way for a long period of time, there's probably a new way to do it better. And Harvard is one university that's been thinking about how we can get people to come to our campus and explore our campus, maybe on their own terms, not when there's an official visiting day, maybe not when there's an official tour. So they recreated their college tour on Foursquare, where they created a whole bunch of locations on Foursquare and tips about the buildings and the campus, and they basically gave people the opportunity to open their phone and explore the campus without anyone else. Make them part of the program. Recently, we discovered this video by University of Duke. They actually did a program what they called On Campus, One Day at Duke, and they actually targeted their own students to really capture the life of a student there, what it's like to be on campus, in classroom. And they promoted it everywhere. You could see when you got on the bus going around campus, you see One Day at Duke hashtag. And the ask was, share pictures, share video, share your life with us. And what they did is, instead of having a standard video now that shows what their campus college is, they actually show a program that was put together entirely with footage from their students. Find new ways of delivering value. Full Sail University has this really cool idea where they go out and they get alumni, like one of the producers of the television show Walking Dead. And when Walking Dead aired on TV, they actually did a Facebook chat on their Facebook page with their alumni, giving their students and prospective students a whole new opportunity to connect with the university. And Rhode Island School of Design has these really cool digital entrepreneurial packages now that they provide their students, so that when they're thinking about starting their own business, which they all hope to do someday, they now have Square to take payments, and they have a 6-month subscription, I think, to Behance, an online publishing platform for their art. And last, always be experimenting. The truth is, what we talk about today is probably not going to be here or be significant in the same way 2 years from now. A year ago, a product like Vine, which is a video platform that Twitter has, didn't even exist. I think it started just about 12 months ago. And recently, UCLA actually live blogged an open brain surgery using 6-second videos on Vine, which is amazing, and they wouldn't have thought of that a year ago. And University of Michigan gives their students an opportunity, their prospective students, an opportunity to connect with their current students by having a Snapchat channel of their own, catching student pride and letting people follow it all year long. So those are 5 recommendations, things to get started. Thank you for having me.
Good job. So I think we have about 10 minutes for questions while you're emailing, texting, Twittering, WhatsApping your questions in. I've got a couple here, Kevin, maybe we can open with while we're waiting for questions from the audience. So you provided some examples in your talk about, I guess what I would call tone-deaf communications. So how can we, as a business, improve and kind of get out ahead of that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, one of the things I think about in terms of your challenge is also my challenge. I'm 10 years out of college, which means I'm also already at a point where things that people are doing in college are different than I'm doing today. So, the amazing thing is, though, you have an opportunity because you're enrolling new students every year, tens, hundreds of thousands of incoming freshmen. So you have a massive focus group kind of in your backyard. And what I do is, all the partners at my agency actually are around the age where they have teen children. They all have teen children. And every Monday I ask them what their kids are doing on the weekend, what apps they're using on their phone. If I get to meet their kids, if they come into the office, I like to look at their phone, what apps they have. So, constantly researching it. Recently, I read an article actually about Taco Bell. I don't know if you've noticed, Taco Bell has had a massive upswing in their success as a company. And one of the things they attributed it to was finally trying not to just think about what the younger generation wanted and just hiring freshmen right out of college to be on their marketing team and really tapping their insights about communicating with teens. So that's my thought.
Great. You also mentioned the number of brand conversations that millennials have. I think the number was 145 conversations a week. How are these different groups, consistently keeping themselves, or how can we, keep ourselves, in those conversations and make sure that, that our key messages are getting out?
That part is honestly, it's a little challenging. The trick is to figure out where the right conversations are happening around the topics you want to be a part of. We look at things like Facebook and Twitter, and while they both have hundreds of millions of people using them and different reach, different audiences, actually they're very different platforms. So CNN is actually the #1 source of content on Twitter. It's a very news-heavy platform, whereas BuzzFeed is the #1 source of content on Facebook. So you're going to have to do some research to figure out where the conversation is that you want to be a part of and understand the right platform and put yourself there.
So as you think about our product, it's really making sure that we are educating our students, and to do that, we have to challenge them and consistently raise the bar on their academic experience. How would you balance the intensity of that with this kind of instant gratification, constant reward type of process that you talked about?
Yeah, I know there's a mix of online and in-person universities here. One thing I was thinking about was, I don't know if anyone's had the opportunity to play with Code Academy. It's an online kind of university of sorts that helps you learn how to program. And it's really, really successfully tapped this idea of constant reward and constant motivation, because they have a similar challenge that a lot of times universities have, which is how to get people motivated from start to finish. So certain things that they do is they show, which skills you've actually, not just like, here's the class start to finish, but what skills incrementally you've actually earned, and which types of activities you can do now with those combinations of skills. And you unlock different types of, first there's the assignment, and then there's the game that you can complete with your abilities to code, and the badges you've earned to show off what kind of levels of development you've had. So, it's going to be different if it's in person. It's obviously not as easy, but there's definitely ways to think about how you can incrementally guide people through their growth and development, instead of just thinking about classically, you're starting a class and finishing a class.
Great. You know, there's a lot of different apps out there, and it seems like every week, you know, I read about a new app and a new hot app, and usually by the time I read about it, they've already got 50 million users or something. You know, how do you keep up with all of that and figure out, you know, where the, you know, your target audience is going, you know, at any particular point in time?
It really is doing a lot of reading and a lot of talking to teenagers. Before I came here, I actually sat down with a friend of mine who teaches high school at a university in downtown Manhattan, and he was telling me about, you know, he uses something like Class Dojo, which we saw, to communicate with his teachers. He uses a new application. I didn't even know this was possible, but he can give kids tests, and then he takes out his phone and he scans the tests with his phone, and it basically does what Scantron did when I was in grade school. But that's something I never would have known if I hadn't talked to them. So it really takes constant immersion, especially with this audience that's changing so drastically.
And you know, you now, this is your profession. You've obviously developed a very influential firm and you know, done a lot of great work. Where do you find the talent? How do you go about, you know, recruiting people to join your company to help you do that?
It is actually, it's harder than you'd think. But the good news is that a lot of the tools that we use to communicate with teens are the tools that people are using in their lives, and I think that's one of the things that has changed drastically. You know, people are communicating on Snapchat because they want to as humans, and then they're already learning how to use it to better serve our clients. So, you know, you have an opportunity to speak to college students. It's actually a skill set that they have in their lives before they've gone to potentially graduate school or had other types of business skills from another type of profession. So specifically coming out of college, it's a great opportunity to get people in this business. Great.
I don't see any questions yet from the audience. Oh, here we go. So how do you redesign communications to more effectively engage with today's students?
So, you know, when I was thinking about how I would have looked at Brandeis if I was making my decision to go there today, you know, previously I obviously read all the literature that came to me in the mail. But if I was doing it today, I actually would have done what I did with my reunion here. You know, when I got back from the reunion last night, I actually opened Instagram and I looked at the reunion hashtag for the event, and I browsed all the photos that people had posted to get a feel for what people had experienced, what they liked, what they disliked. And I imagine that's a lot of what I would have done if I was choosing a college today. I would have gone on Twitter and I would have looked at what are students sharing, what are their frustrations, what does the life look like on Instagram, not in the pamphlet that makes it look all shiny and it was perfectly picked. So a lot of what I would do is figure out how to tap the people that are at your university to tell your story.
Right. Do you see, as you run more global campaigns, I think some of the examples you used around HBO were sort of US-centric, but as you look at more global campaigns, are you seeing differences in how, you know, the social media and things are used, you know, from country to country?
So obviously certain countries for a long period of time were definitely, you know, in a lot of ways they skipped the desktop social media craze and they went right to mobile. And that was, you know, access to computers are different, access to technology is different. So that was one big thing, but that's actually, you know, pretty much normalizing right now. If you see a product like Facebook, I think, you know, of the 1.3 billion users, 1 billion of them are actually on the mobile phone. So, you know, that at least is kind of a common thread of mobile access first. But what is different is the properties themselves. And one of the reasons Facebook acquired an app like WhatsApp is because the majority of people who use WhatsApp are outside of the US. And so when I have friends who moved back to India after college, and if I want to communicate with them, I don't open Facebook, I open WhatsApp. And I have friends in Korea, and if I want to communicate with them, I open Kik. So, you know, definitely different properties, different countries, and you have to look at what's the right thing to use there to communicate with people.
But the uptake of social media, you see, is fairly consistent, even though the brand of app that they use might be different.
Absolutely. Social in general and mobile as the avenue.
Okay. And I think we've got time for one more question. So, you know, can you expand a little bit on, you know, how we can better use, you know, our stakeholders, our students, maybe some of our academics, to improve our messaging?
Yeah, I think, you know, administration is kind of the classic understanding of top-down talking. So, you know, the opportunity for people to really speak directly with the people that are going to change their lives, whether it's the students that are already at the university or teachers that they could possibly have a class with, that's a significant opportunity to connect people to the people that are really going to matter. So I think, you know, if it's doing a Twitter Q&A with professors so that people can ask questions, well, what's the type of work I'm going to do in your classroom? What's the dynamic going to be like? Talking to students about, you know, what it's like to be a freshman, a sophomore, a junior. You know, you have to give people the opportunity to ask the questions to the people that are living that life so they can see what it's like, and that's how they're going to make the decisions. Great.
Well, Kevin, I really appreciate you taking the time to come out this afternoon. I think as we think about innovation as being, you know, one of the top 3 priorities that we talked about this morning, you know, for Laureate 3.0, you know, clearly how we communicate and the technologies and means that we use to communicate with our prospects and our students is going to be, you know, an area that's just ripe with opportunity for us to really innovate. So I appreciate you coming today and sharing your insights on that space.
Thank you for having me.